When a massive financial company collapses, what do you think of? Bad investments, right? Risky bets gone wrong? Well, that's what most of us assume. But what if I told you the real reason, the silent killer behind some of the biggest financial train wrecks, is something way more basic and a whole lot scarier? So let's just ask it straight up. What really makes a financial firm go under? We all think it's about having a balance sheet stuffed with junk. But the research we're looking at today points to a totally different enemy, one that can strike in the blink of an eye. Because here's the crazy part. A firm can be sitting on a mountain of valuable assets, we're talking prime real estate, blue chip stocks, you name it, and still find itself staring into the abyss, literally overnight. The problem isn't a lack of wealth, it's something else. It all boils down to running out of cold, hard cash. It's the simple, brutal inability to pay your bills. Today, right now. It's not a problem of being poor, it's a problem of being unable to access your own money. And that's the heart of the mystery we're unpacking. Okay, so let's put a name to this silent killer. It's called liquidity risk. It's time we pull back the curtain and really get to know the culprit behind these massive financial shocks. So here it is, plain and simple. Funding liquidity risk is the danger that you can't meet your immediate debts. It's not about being broke in the long term, it's about not being able to get your hands on cash fast enough to survive the next 24 hours. And here is the absolute best way to think about it. Picture this. You own a gorgeous multi-million-dollar mansion. On paper, you are incredibly wealthy, but you've got $0 in your wallet, you can't even go buy a loaf of bread. That's liquidity risk in a nutshell. You are asset rich, but cash poor. Now, this risk actually comes in two flavors. You've got funding liquidity risk, that's when you just can't get the cash you need, and then you have market liquidity risk. That's when you can't sell your assets, like that mansion, without taking a massive haircut on the price. They're related, for sure, but it's that first one, the sudden inability to pay your bills, that acts like a tripwire for a total collapse. And listen, this is not just some academic theory. Just think back to 2008. Lehman Brothers was a titan, absolutely loaded with assets. But as this quote points out, it was taken down by a short-term cash crunch. Confidence vanished, the funding taps were turned off, and the entire house of cards came crashing down. So if this risk is so incredibly dangerous, where might it be hiding today? Well, let's turn our attention to a part of the financial world that a recent study calls the unseen weak link, non-bank financial institutions, or NBFIs for short. So who are we talking about here? Well, it's a huge group. Everything from fintech lenders and leasing companies to giant mutual funds. And the research says they are uniquely vulnerable for a few big reasons. They tend to have less direct oversight than big banks. They often operate with thinner cash cushions. And, this is critical, they don't have that direct emergency lifeline to a central bank if things go south. Top it off with a habit of relying on just one or two sources for their money, and you've got a recipe for potential disaster. All right, now for the really cool part. A study dug through 14 years of data to figure out what actually predicts a collapse for these companies. And the findings are best understood as a fight between heroes and villains, factors that either push a firm towards the edge or heroically pull it back from the brink. Let's meet the villains first, shall we? These are the forces and the weaknesses that crank up the danger level and make a firm much more likely to fail. Villain number 1. Inflation. The study gave each factor an impact score, and inflation's is a whopping plus 1.80. That tells us it is a massively destabilizing force. It just eats away at the real value of a company's assets and makes the people who lend them money really, really nervous. Coming in next, with an impact score of plus 0.305, is the cost of borrowing money. It's pretty simple. When interest rates climb, it puts a direct squeeze on a company's bottom line. Being dependent on expensive funding is like walking a tightrope without a net. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. The data also uncovered a powerful team of heroes. These are the protective measures that give companies the strength and resilience to weather a storm. And the biggest hero of them all, it has a negative impact score of minus 1.185. It's called the Liquidity Coverage Ratio, or LCR. Honestly, you can just think of this as a company's financial immune system. It's a measure of how much high-quality, easy-to-access cash they have to survive a 30-day crisis. A high LCR is the ultimate shield. Another key hero with a protective score of minus 0.048 is a firm's credit rating. A great rating is like a seal of approval. It tells the market, hey, you can trust us, which makes it so much easier and cheaper to get funding, especially when things get choppy. And this chart just lays out the battle perfectly. Over on the left, you see the huge destabilizing power of inflation, pushing that risk score up by 1.080. But then look to the right, at our hero, the liquidity coverage ratio. Its protective effect is even stronger, pulling the risk score down by 1.185. This makes it crystal clear. Having that cash buffer is more powerful than one of the biggest economic threats a firm can face. So now that we know the heroes and the villains, the big question is, how do we build a safer financial system? Well, the study actually gives us a pretty clear blueprint, both for the regulators and for the companies themselves. This blueprint for a more stable system really has three main parts. First, widen the rules. Those tough liquidity standards that apply to big banks, they need to be extended to cover these more vulnerable non-banks, to close the gaps. Second, embrace tech. Instead of checking on risk every few months, use tools like AI to create a real-time early warning system. And third, diversify funding. Companies have got to stop relying on just one or two expensive places for cash and build a wider, stronger financial foundation. All of this leaves us with one final and pretty heavy question. We built a whole new set of rules to prevent another 2008. But as the financial world keeps changing, is the next big crisis quietly brewing in the shadows, in these regulatory blind spots where we aren't looking closely enough? That's definitely something to think about.